Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of cigarette smoke, silent courtyards, and clinking coins passed in gloved hands. It's Warsaw, 1946, a city still breathing the dust of crumbled cathedrals and lost dreams. Somewhere within the labyrinth of scorched bricks and half-collapsed tenements, a woman stirs in the quiet. Her name is Zofia, widow, survivor, and, in a way that no one quite expects yet, the future queen of the city's black market. The air smells of wet stone and leftover war. If you've ever been near a fireplace after a storm, you're close. She lies awake, though the city is trying its best to sleep. Somewhere, a tram screeches past an empty intersection, followed by a silence so deep it hums. Zofia doesn't flinch. She's been through louder nights. You probably won't survive this place. Not the way she did. It's not just about ration lines or avoiding bullets. It's about walking through rooms where no one's laughed in years, and still finding the strength to say, maybe I'll plant basil here. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bed is wide, but not empty. A book lies across the other pillow, its spine cracked and corners turned up like ears listening in the dark. Zofia hasn't turned the page in days. She reads the same line every night. He walked into the woods and did not return. She's memorized the rhythm of that sentence, not just the words, like a hymn. It's been almost 7 years since Stefan left. First with promises, then with silence. Like most Warsaw men called to the front in '39, he vanished into the fog of war. What remained were scraps of letters, stiff uniforms folded tight in drawers, and wedding photos that feel more like documents than memories. She gets up not because she's rested, but because it's what you do. The air is cold enough to make her breath visible. A crack in the window glass splits the sunrise into 2 uneven lines. Below, the courtyard is still asleep, save for a cat prowling like it owns every stone. Her morning starts with silence. No prayer, no music, just the slow ritual of boiling water, folding shawls, checking the door 3 times, one for hope, one for fear, and one because habit is its own kind of superstition. Zofia isn't the only widow in the building, but she's the one with the quietest shoes. The others gossip in corners, barter for soap, and cry louder than necessary, as if volume might change fate. Zofia watches them, but never joins. Her grief is sharp-edged and private, like a knife in a drawer no one dares open. Outside, the city stirs. Warsaw in 1946 isn't the ruin it was in '45, but that's not saying much. Buildings still lean like drunks at dawn. Rubble is piled into casual monuments no one wants to look at too long. People live in basements, in stairwells, in the hollow spaces between yesterday's bombs and tomorrow's bureaucracy. And yet, life finds a way. Black markets sprout like weeds in crumbled corners. A man with a limp sells soap that smells like engine oil. A teenager trades cigarettes for stories he makes up on the spot. A mother of 6 sells bread rolls so hard they could double as weapons. Zofia, however, does none of this, not yet. Instead, she walks. Down streets named after heroes who are all dead. Past churches where priests whisper more politics than scripture. Through alleys that smell of cabbage and coal, and occasionally the sharp scent of danger. Everyone watches her pass, not because she's loud, but because she isn't. Her hair is always tied just so, her coat tailored even if it's patched. Her eyes say very little, but they listen to everything. She pauses at the wall near the old tram depot, a place where notices used to be posted. Missing persons, ration announcements, and sometimes crude charcoal drawings of faces someone still remembered. She scans them without blinking. None are Stefan. There's a particular hush around Zofia, even as a group of kids run past her yelling about blackberries and bullets. It's as if the city knows her name already, even if it hasn't figured out why. A mainstream fact, just to anchor us here. By 1946, nearly 85% of Warsaw had been destroyed during the war. The city became a stage for ashes and improvisation. What stood did so stubbornly. What fell stayed down. People lived between those two definitions of resilience, and yet many people still think that post-war Warsaw was an empty shell until the communists filled it with order. But that's not quite true. So what do you think? Was Zofia's world chaos, or simply a different kind of structure? In her building, she passes the door with 3 locks and 1 eye hole. Behind it lives an old man who plays harmonica at night and snores like a sawmill. She steps over the 5th stair, which creaks. She feeds a pigeon by the window who, frankly, looks like it's plotting something criminal. Her apartment smells like boiled linen and lavender. There's a chipped mirror with a lipstick kiss still visible in the corner, a remnant from one of her louder days. On the windowsill, a ceramic bowl full of buttons, bullets, and a corkscrew. The things you need in this world or the next. The kettle whistles. She pours tea, black and bitter, and holds the cup with both hands. Her fingers are pale but strong, nails short, no rings. Her wedding band went to pay for antibiotics 2 years ago. Stefan's was traded for flour the year before that. She doesn't flinch at the memory. That's not how she remembers him. She remembers the way he walked, purposeful, but not rushed. She remembers his habit of folding napkins diagonally, as if straight lines offended him. She remembers his laugh, quiet but sincere, like someone opening a chest of silverware they thought was lost. Downstairs, someone bangs on a radiator. The day begins in earnest. Zofia takes one last sip of tea, then she opens a drawer. Inside is a single envelope, yellowed and resealed too many times. It holds the last letter she received from Stefan. Unread? No. She's memorized it. But something about the weight of it in her hands feels like a pulse. She folds it back, not because it's done, but because she isn't. Her story begins here, not in the war, not in the waiting, but in the quiet morning after, when a woman decides she will not simply survive, she will control. She opens the door. The corridor smells like old soup and mothballs. But outside? Outside is the black market. And Zofia is ready to walk into it, heels first. Zofia's feet make no sound as she steps into the street. It's the kind of morning that doesn't quite know what season it is. Part spring, part leftover winter. The sky is a dull sheet of pewter, and the breeze smells of thawing earth and smoke. A dog barks in the distance, then falls silent. Somewhere nearby, a hammer taps against wood in slow, resigned rhythm, as if even it is tired of rebuilding. She walks east, past the old bakery that hasn't sold bread in over a year. The windows are boarded up, but someone keeps trying to etch obscenities into the wood, only to be scrubbed away the next day. It's an unspoken game between vandal and owner. That's the sort of war Warsaw's become. Petty, persistent, oddly personal. Today she's not walking to mourn. She's not walking to remember. She's walking to barter. But first we need to meet the woman she used to be. Zofia pre-war was not a queen of smoke and shadows. She was the wife of a civil engineer named Stefan Pikarts, and their home was filled with the low-level joys of well-matched silence. Her world then was one of ironed linens, embroidered napkins, piano lessons on Sunday afternoons. They had a small flat with polished floors, a radio that only hummed when it liked the weather, and a collection of tea tins she had inherited from a great aunt who claimed to once have danced with a Habsburg. She hosted dinners, not extravagant ones, modest, elegant affairs with honey cake, hot broth, and polite conversation about things like weather patterns and rising rents. Zofia never considered herself particularly brave or clever, but she noticed things, the way guests folded their coats, who drank their tea without sugar, even when sugar was plentiful, who touched their knives too tightly. She also had a quiet ambition, not for power, but for competence. She wanted to be the sort of woman who could fix a hem, remember 3 languages, and kill a chicken if necessary. A just-in-case sort of woman. She never had to test that theory, until, of course, the war came. Do you remember the day Stefan left? It was the second week of September, 1939. The Germans had already crossed the Vistula, and the city's heartbeat had turned to staccato. He kissed her in the stairwell, not wanting to wake the neighbors. Told her he was volunteering for sapper duty, his engineering background after all. He promised he'd be back before the first snowfall. He didn't come back for the first snow, nor the second. The first letter arrived in January. It was damp around the edges and smelled of mud. He wrote about digging trenches, about a boy from Łódź who could play Chopin on a harmonica, about snow so deep it swallowed boots whole. There were 10 more letters after that. The tone changed, from hopeful to tired to distant, and then nothing. Many people still think that those lost to war simply disappeared into the mist of battles and graves. But the truth was more erratic. Some were taken to camps. Others died in forests with no witnesses. A few escaped and lived under new names. So what do you think? Would Stefan have written if he could? Or was his silence a kind of choice? Zofia had no way to know, so she waited, for months, then years. She learned to stretch potatoes in ways her mother never taught. She learned how to fix cracked leather with candle wax. She learned that the people who spoke the most about resistance often knew the least about survival. By 1942, she no longer waited in the window. She began to move. First, to help her neighbors, running notes, finding aspirin, delivering parcels no one else would carry. Not for money, not yet, for necessity, and maybe for meaning. Then came the soup lines. People noticed her hands, pale but clean, that she never begged, that her shoes, while worn, were polished, that she had a face like someone who still remembered warm rooms. Whispers followed her. That woman has a husband in the underground, they said. That woman used to teach. That woman once slapped a German officer across the face. None were true. None were false. Zofia never corrected them. Her first barter wasn't dramatic. A neighbor named Mrs. Zawadzka had 5 tins of sardines and a leaky roof. Zofia had some leftover wax cloth and a needle. She made the repair. 8 sardines for a week. Realized something strange. Helping people in a ruined city came with its own quiet form of power. From there, it snowballed. A favor here, a message there. Cigarettes, buttons, dried beans, small economies of trust. She noticed things others didn't, like which guards looked away when women with baskets passed by, which children begged too well to be truly starving, which traders always had dry shoes, even on muddy days. She made mental maps, routes with fewer eyes, corners with good echo. stairwells where secrets could be whispered without bouncing. It wasn't planning, not yet, but it was preparation. One day in 1943, she was approached by a woman with red gloves and a scar across her throat. The woman didn't give a name, just a question. "Can you hide something for a week?" Zofia didn't ask what. She nodded. It was a parcel, wrapped in wax cloth and string. She put it beneath the floorboards near the old stove, where it stayed, untouched, for 7 nights. When the woman returned, she said nothing, gave Zofia a wrapped chocolate bar, and left. A week later, a man with an accent and bad teeth knocked on her door and offered 3 cartons of Russian cigarettes for a parcel he claimed she'd never seen. She closed the door without speaking. Later that night, she checked under the floorboards. Another package, different string, and that, as they say, was the beginning. She didn't plan to become a black market broker, but need has a way of shaping identity, and Warsaw was a city sculpted by need. Food, medicine, heat, safety, they were all up for trade. And Zofia had something rarer than any of them. She had consistency. While others made deals and disappeared, she stayed. She honored terms. She delivered quietly. She remembered faces and never raised her voice. Her name began to circulate not with shouts, but with murmurs. At night, she'd light a single candle and reread Stefan's letters, then fold them away as if sealing off a part of herself she couldn't afford to carry in daylight. And by 1946, with the city half built and half broken, Zofia's steps no longer hesitated. The war had ended, but she hadn't stopped moving. She had learned something the war hadn't meant to teach. Power doesn't always come from violence. Sometimes it comes from knowing exactly when to say yes, when to nod, and when to keep your mouth shut while someone else blusters. And Zofia was a master of silence. The morning Zofia receives the final letter from Stefan, the city smells of iron and thawed gutters. It's March 1946, and there are rumors that real meat, black market or not, is about to return to Schembeck Square. The war is over, they say, officially. But the world Zofia moves through feels like the sort of after no one planned for. She doesn't hear the postman arrive. The door creaks open with its usual groan, and the envelope is already resting on the table like it wandered in on its own. The handwriting is his, or at least it looks close enough that her stomach knots. It isn't new. Not really. Postmarked nearly 3 years ago from a hospital camp in Brno, the paper smells of iodine and tobacco. The lines are short, spare. A man writing with borrowed time and a broken pencil. He says he's alive. Or was. He says he lost most of his hearing from shelling and spent the last months of the war in a Czech infirmary staffed by Hungarian nuns. He remembers her lavender soap and the way she used to eat jam straight from the jar when she thought he wasn't looking. But what stays with her is this one line scrawled halfway down the page like a thought slipped in accidentally. If I don't make it back, make sure you don't become someone who waits forever. She places the letter down like it's fragile glass, and for a full minute, she just stares out the window at a boy trying to fish a coin out of a sewer grate using string and chewing gum. Stefan is gone, or at least he's not coming back. This letter is the end of that thread, so she doesn't cry. She ties her scarf a little tighter and heads out the door. Today, she has errands. Butter, some bartered coal, and a delivery waiting at the edge of the Praga district. In post-war Warsaw, trains don't always run on time, but couriers, they do. Especially the unofficial ones. Especially the kind who never write their names and prefer payment in dental gold. Today's pickup is unusual, though. She's meeting a man who's come in from the border. He goes by Metek, though even that, she's sure, is a lie. He's wearing 2 coats and still shivering. From the train, he produces a small parcel wrapped in wax paper and tied with butcher's twine. Inside, there's a jar of honey. That's it, but Zofia knows better. She peels back the paper, just enough to see a sliver of silver foil hidden at the bottom of the jar. Rolled cigarette paper packed tight with powdered morphine. Medicinal, of course. The honey's just camouflage. "What do I owe you?" she asks. 3 tins of sardines and a bottle of pepper vodka. She raises an eyebrow. "I like my luxuries," Metek shrugs. They part ways near the station ruins. No handshake. No names exchanged beyond the alias. Just a nod, a step backward, and silence. Zofia turns to leave, but as she crosses the tracks, she sees something that stops her cold. A man standing under the shell of a streetlight. Tall, stooped. His coat too short at the wrists, like it once fit better. He lights a cigarette. The way he flicks the match, it's identical. The tilt of the head, the stillness of his shoulders. For a moment, she's 17 again, watching Stefan in the mirror as he tries to look older than he is. She stares. He doesn't see her. Then the wind shifts, and she sees the boots. Russian. Worn smooth, but unmistakable. And in that tiny, disorienting moment, she realizes if Stefan ever did return, he wouldn't wear those. Still, her feet move a half step forward before she forces herself to stop. Her pulse is like a tin drum in her throat. The man walks away, doesn't turn back, doesn't vanish, just merges into the crowd the way ghosts do when they've decided not to haunt you after all. Back in her flat that evening, she takes the honey jar and places it behind a tin labeled cinnamon sticks. Then she reaches under the bed and pulls out the cigar box she hasn't opened in months. Inside are ration slips, a broken brooch, a pair of French silk gloves she'll never wear again, and 5 zloty sealed in wax paper. She adds the letter, not with ceremony, but with a small sigh, like someone closing a window before a storm. That's the day Zofia starts saying yes to more dangerous trades. Butter and coal, still, but now also morphine, scalpel kits, small knives, information, because now she knows there's nothing left to wait for. Mainstream history confirms. By early 1946, the remnants of Nazi collaborators were being rounded up and executed or quietly pardoned if they had Soviet favor. Black market operations flourished under the noses of a chaotic new government still figuring out how to govern a city, made mostly of bricks and absence. Zofia doesn't worry about legality. She worries about stability. There's a girl in the next building with typhus, and a mother too scared to ask for medicine. Zofia gives her the honey jar. No one thanks her. That's not the deal. She spends the next week arranging a different trade, one involving dental tools hidden inside a piano leg. There's something mildly hilarious about watching a 10-year-old cart a piano leg through the street, as if he's just discovered music. Zofia watches from a distance, scarf wrapped tight, hands in pockets. She doesn't think of herself as a criminal. She thinks of herself as a realist with a sewing kit and a talent for reading faces. But many people still think that women in the post-war Polish underground only supported resistance from the sidelines, cooking, carrying messages, hiding people. Zofia is the contradiction. So what do you think? Does a woman with powdered morphine in a honey jar count as support or command? One night, after a delivery, she returns home to find someone has left a small package at her door. Inside, a pair of silk stockings, a silver spoon, and a note with 2 words. Thank you. There's no signature, just the scent of lilacs. April rains in Warsaw are less about water and more about memory. They don't cleanse, they remind. Streets glisten like bruises under the gas lamps, and puddles reflect faces you'd rather forget. Zofia stands by the window with a lukewarm cup of chicory coffee, watching two boys argue over a bent bicycle rim. Their voices bounce through the courtyard like bad gossip. She's been up since before dawn, waiting. Not for a letter, not anymore. This time it's for a man with a mouthful of silver. His name is Janusz, and he runs with a crew from the Mokotów district, a rougher part of town where loyalty is measured in blood and bread in that order. He's late, of course. Zofia doesn't like delays. They remind her too much of Stefan. But Janusz brings something she needs today. Fillings, gold fillings to be precise. 5 of them, extracted from corpses that will not miss them. The deal is simple. Zofia gets the gold, Janusz gets penicillin. The first time she bartered medicine for human teeth, she gagged after the door closed. The third time, she stopped blinking. Today is the 7th. At exactly 8:17 a.m., Janusz appears at the base of the stairwell. He's got a limp, a grin, and the posture of a man who knows he'll die in a basement someday, but hasn't decided which one. He carries a small handkerchief like it holds pastries. It doesn't. They're clean, he says before she asks. Boiled and scrubbed. No smell. Zofia doesn't answer. She just opens the door wider. They make the exchange in silence. The teeth, still warm from his coat pocket, clink against the wooden table like coins from another realm. Janusz, curious, asks, "How do you even know who wants this stuff?" She doesn't reply. Instead, she hands him a parcel wrapped in wax paper. Inside, 2 vials of penicillin and 1 sugar cube. "A gift?" he asks, eyes glinting. "No," she says. "A test. If you come back tomorrow, we'll talk again." He grins. "I like you, lady." Zofia locks the door after him and lights a cigarette she won't finish. The room smells of tobacco and something metallic, like blood trying to behave itself. Later that day, she walks to a small apartment in Śródmieście, above a butcher's shop that sells meat so gray it looks ashamed. She knocks twice, waits, then knocks once more. The woman who opens the door is thin as wire and just as tense. Her son lies on a cot in the next room, his skin pale, his breath ragged. A former courier ran messages for the Home Army, took shrapnel during the uprising, now rots because the pharmacy shelves are cleaner than the churches. Zofia hands over the vials. No charge, not this time. The woman offers soup. Zofia accepts because saying no would feel impolite, and because sometimes hot broth tastes like dignity. As she eats, she studies the room. Sparse, wallpaper peeling, a crucifix held together by string, and a photograph on the shelf, 2 people dancing in a room with chandeliers. Zofia wonders who they were before all this. She walks home through streets that still bleed history. Every corner is a memory dressed in ash. On Krakowski Przedmieści, she passes a man reciting poetry to pigeons. He wears 3 coats and no shoes. She drops a crust of bread by his feet. He stops talking long enough to nod. Mainstream fact. By 1946, black market goods accounted for over 60% of all trade in cities like Warsaw. You could get almost anything if you had the right combination of nerve and currency. And the currency? Often not money, but teeth, coffee, soap, secrets. Back in her apartment, Zofia places the gold fillings in a small tin marked buttons. She hides it beneath the floorboards, beside a bundle of morphine packets and a locket she hasn't worn in years. The locket. She picks it up and clicks it open. Inside is a photograph of Stefan, young and smug, his tie crooked. The image is faded, but the crease along his chin, where she folded it once too angrily, remains sharp. She closes it, sets it aside. Then, from the other room, she hears a knock. Not on the door, On the window. She walks over slowly, cautious. Outside stands a boy she knows only as Kuba. 11, maybe 12. One shoe, both socks mismatched, and a face that's already seen 3 betrayals too many for his age. He hands her a paper bag. Inside, a small block of Belgian chocolate wrapped in Nazi-issued wax paper. Found it in a drain, he says. Of course you did. Got any buttons? She tosses him a handful. Real ones, brass. He grins and runs. Zofia closes the window and turns the chocolate over in her hands. Where did he really find it? Whose past did he just hand her? And should she worry about who's missing it? Many people still think the post-war economy ran on ration coupons and Soviet goodwill. But Warsaw knew better. Warsaw ran on children who could lie well, on bakers who baked secrets into loaves, on women like Zofia, who knew where to hide a kilo of sugar between linen folds. So what do you think? Was the real power in the bullets, or in who decided who ate? That night, Zofia sits in the bath, not to wash, but to think. The water is barely warm. The walls echo more than they should. She runs her fingers along the chipped enamel and listens for sounds that don't belong. Nothing. Just the city outside, settling into its night rhythms. Laughter too loud, footsteps too fast, a piano chord played 3 times then abandoned. She closes her eyes. In the silence, she sees Stefan's boots by the door. Imaginary. Always clean, always facing out. She opens her eyes again. Gone. The boots, the boy, the man with silver fillings. All part of the same story now. Her story. And it's only just beginning. There is no grave. Not for Stefan. Not for the life they built. Not for the woman she used to be. But grief demands ritual, even without tombstones. So Zofia creates her own. Every Sunday morning, she walks to the east side of Powązki Cemetery, where a wall still bears scorch marks from the uprising. She sits on the 3rd bench from the gate, always the 3rd, and eats a small piece of bread, breaking it slowly into equal halves. One for her, one for the silence. She never speaks, but others do. A man in a black cap tells her stories about his brother's last breath. A woman with ink-stained fingers whispers names that no longer have faces. A boy sells flowers without stems. This is her church now. But today, the ritual is cut short. A breathless girl, 15 maybe, rushes up the path, her coat flapping like wings. She's one of Zofia's orphans, not by blood, but by barter. Her name is Jagoda. Eyes like storm water, knees always scabbed. They found a body, Jagoda says. In Praga. Zofia doesn't blink, just folds her bread back into its paper. Show me. The walk is short. Everything in Warsaw is short now. Streets, tempers, lives. The corpse lies in a half-dug trench near a demolished tram station. Face down, hands bound, no shoes. But what catches Zofia's eye is the neck. There, against gray flesh and mottled bruising, hangs something impossible. A brass locket. Her locket, the one she buried under the floorboards months ago. The one with Stefan's picture. The same photograph folded along the chin. It's identical, except now it's open, and inside is a different image. A coded ration slip she hasn't seen in years, folded to fit the frame. Jagoda looks at her. Yours? No, Zofia says. Not anymore. The local constable, new, uncertain, eager to show competence, asks if she knows the man. She peers closer. He's in his 30s, face unrecognizable from rot and rats. But his hands are manicured, his shirt French-stitched, and someone tried, clumsily, to break his jaw, possibly looking for hidden capsules. No, she repeats. She leaves before the questions catch up. Back at home, she checks the tin beneath the floorboards. The locket is gone. She hadn't noticed. How did it leave? Who took it? More importantly, who put it on a corpse? These questions become ballast in her lungs, heavy, dragging, but necessary. She breathes slower now, like someone learning a new rhythm. The next day, she visits the seamstress across town, a blind woman named Irina who trades fabric for news. They drink tea sweetened with something definitely not sugar, and Zofia slides across a small parcel. A spool of copper wire, a shard of mirror, and a strip of rubber tubing. "You're making a bomb," Irina says flatly. "No," Zofia replies, "a message." She leaves with a new lining sewn into her coat, one that rustles when she walks, heavy with possibilities. Later that week, she attends a small funeral, not for the corpse in Praga, but for a neighbor's mother. It's held in a crumbling chapel, half-roofed, with candles that flicker like they're nervous. The priest drones. The mourners mumble. But near the back, a man sits alone, broad shoulders, scar down his jaw. Watching her, he doesn't approach, but he doesn't stop watching. That night, her window's lock is scratched, not broken, just tested. She doesn't sleep. Instead, she opens her ledger. Not a real ledger, just a child's notebook covered in oilskin. Inside are names, symbols, quantities. A quiet kingdom of inventory. She flips to the final page. There, she writes one new line. "Someone is testing me. Let them." Mainstream fact. By mid-1946, Warsaw's underground was more complex than most realized. Gangs, ex-partisans, Soviet-backed informants, and civilians in need. Everyone intersected. Many people still think that the black market was run by thugs in basements. But what do you think? What if it was run by women in tea dresses with bulletproof ledgers? The next morning, Zofia visits a contact at the train yard, a railman named Leon who once smuggled dynamite in bread crates. He doesn't smile when he sees her. "Bad business in Praga," he says. "Tell me something useful." He shrugs. "Someone's buying up old jewelry, lockets, brooches, pocket watches with photos inside. Says it's sentimental value but pays in dollars." Zofia nods slowly. "Who?" Leon lights a cigarette. Doesn't answer. Instead, he hands her a scrap of paper with a single address. "Just in case you want to knock." That night, Zofia stands outside a flat in the Wola district. The door is blue. The curtains are military issue. And the window glass glows orange, like someone inside is trying to mimic warmth. She doesn't knock. Not yet. Instead, she steps back into the shadows and waits. She watches a man in a gray coat arrive, watches him knock twice, then twice again. The door opens. He enters. Inside, the lights dim. Zofia stays until dawn. She doesn't know what they're trading in there. Memory, maybe, or misdirection. But the locket wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Someone wants her attention. They have it. Zofia is not afraid of wolves. She's lived among them too long. She knows their tells, the way they smile with too many teeth, how their eyes scan a room for weakness before they scan for exits. Warsaw is full of wolves now, some in uniforms, some in silk ties, some in nothing but desperation and skin. But being a widow among wolves is a particular kind of game. You can't look weak, but you can't look powerful either. Not at first. Power draws knives. Better to look useful. Invisible even. That's why Zofia wears gray. Gray shawls, gray skirts, gray gloves. She moves like smoke. Hard to grasp, easy to ignore. She walks the markets like a customer, not a supplier. She asks polite questions and leaves with information far more valuable than the price of onions. Still, the city knows her. Whispers cling to her coat hem like street dust. She's the one who got morphine past the Russian checkpoints last winter. She's the one who knows which baker laces rye with opium for the right buyer. She's the one who helped that man disappear. Yes, that man. She says nothing. But her silence is a shape people recognize now. It starts to shift the ground beneath her. One morning, a man waits by her door. Tall, white blonde with a cane too elegant for a limping soldier. He doesn't give a name, just nods and holds out a parcel. From someone who remembers, he says. Inside, a roll of silk. French. Not imitation. Real. Still carrying the scent of almonds and cedar. And beneath it, wrapped in waxed linen, 5 foreign passports. Real. Blank. Zofia looks up, but the man is already gone. She places the parcel on her table and doesn't touch it for 3 days. Instead, she begins walking a new route, south of the old market, where courtyards yawn like broken teeth and the air smells of onions, firewood, and fear. This is where she meets Magda. Magda has shoulders like a dock worker and eyes like she's never been surprised by anything in her life. She sells scrap metal, bandages, and information. For the right price, she also rents out an attic with 3 exits and a lock no one can pick. Zofia buys the attic, not with money, but with a box of Austrian cigarettes, 2 spools of copper wire, and a promise. I'll send you 3 people next week. Don't ask their names. Feed them if you can. Keep them if you must. Magda doesn't ask questions. She just hands over the key. Later that evening, Zofia meets with 2 other women in a candlelit basement beneath a defunct shoe repair shop. One is a former nurse. The other, a school teacher who once stabbed a German officer with a compass and never quite stopped shaking afterward. They drink potato wine and pass a notebook around. 3 names are added to the list. 2 new routes are marked with pins and twine. One shipment, bread rolls stuffed with penicillin, is scheduled for Sunday delivery. It's not an empire, not yet, but it's no longer survival either. It's a structure, and Zofia is at its center. Mainstream fact. Many women in post-war Poland became primary operators in black market networks. The absence of men, killed, missing, imprisoned, forced women into positions of leadership they never publicly claimed but quietly wielded. Many people still think men controlled the city's underground. But what do you think? Who really held the ledgers when the guns ran out? 2 nights later, someone knocks at her window again. Not Kuba this time. This one is older. A girl with sharp cheekbones and the kind of eyes that never blink when they lie. Her name is Bazia. She's 15. Speaks 3 languages. Carries knives in both boots. I heard you help people, she says. Zofia studies her. The girl's hands are steady, her breath even, but there's blood on her collar and something raw behind her left ear, like she was dragged once and bit her way free. Zofia nods slowly. I help those who don't waste time. Basia grins. It's a broken thing. Then I'll make myself useful. She does. Within days, Basia becomes a courier, then a bodyguard, then something closer to a shadow. She follows Zofia without being asked, watches every meeting, learns every name, never writes anything down. Zofia doesn't stop her. If the city is full of wolves, it helps to raise one of your own. One morning, Zofia returns from an errand to find her living room window open, the curtains fluttering like startled ghosts. She steps in silently, hand already brushing the pocket where she keeps a sewing needle sharpened into a pick. The room smells different, lavender and something else. Smoke? On her kitchen table, a single glove. Men's, worn, thumb stitched in red thread, and beneath it, a note in blocky handwriting. You're late. Don't let it happen again. No signature. She burns the glove in the stove, then locks the door and moves the money stash to a new place, inside the water tank. She doesn't sleep that night. Instead, she lights a candle and rereads the list of names, underlines one in particular. Józef Wróbel, a man she hasn't seen in years. Last she heard, he was running shipments out of Gdansk. Fast boats, even faster bribes. not someone who usually dealt in petty threats. But the glove? That was his style. The red thread, the arrogant scrawl, the silence. The next day, she sends Beja to ask around, discreetly. By evening, the girl returns with one sentence. Robles in town, but no one's sure who brought him. That's worse than confirmation, because Zofia knows wolves don't wander for fun. They're hunting, and this time they're hunting her. Zofia hasn't seen Roble in over 4 years. The last time they crossed paths, the Gestapo still walked the streets, and their dealings involved a forged train manifest, 2 crates of powdered milk, and a French priest who turned out not to be French, or a priest. Back then, Roble had a smile like a cracked teacup, charming from a distance, dangerous when held too close. His business was speed, smuggling, and silence. He never threatened. He just appeared, got what he wanted, and vanished. So for him to be back now, sending her gloves like calling cards, that's not nostalgia. That's leverage. She doesn't panic. Zofia doesn't do panic. Instead, she sends a note through Jagoda, who's learning fast how to disappear in a crowd, to a man named Zayons, a locksmith by trade, a liar by necessity. His ears are always open, and his pockets are always lined with rumors. The note is just 6 words. Is Roble dealing with the Russians? By the next morning, the answer is under a cabbage in her pantry. No, worse, he's freelance. Which, in post-war Warsaw, is code for unaffiliated, unpredictable, and possibly desperate. The black market runs on alliances. A man working alone is either foolish or armed with something no one else wants to touch. So what does Roble want? The next message arrives folded inside a loaf of bread. She almost bites into it. Jagoda had to press the baker twice for it, and even then, the man looked pale. The note reads, "Meet me where we last paid in silence. Sunset. Come alone." Zofia doesn't need to think. The place is an old tram depot outside Mokotov, where bombed-out tracks run like dead veins. They once exchanged a crate of antibiotics there under firelight, with nothing spoken except the word, enough. At sunset, she walks the ruins in a gray coat, hands empty, face still. Roble is already there, leaning against a rusted tram car like he owns it. Same cracked smile. New scar, across his neck, pink and thick, like someone tried to take his voice. "Zofia," he says, as if her name tastes like wine. "Roble. No hugs? Not unless your ribs are made of bread." He laughs. "Still sharp?" She doesn't smile. "Why the glove?" He shrugs. "I needed your attention. You had it 4 years ago. You lost it. Why now?" He leans in just slightly. "Because Warsaw is changing. The Soviets are taking more than just buildings now. They're taking air. I need a partner who doesn't flinch." "I don't flinch," she says. "I calculate." "Good. Then calculate this. There's a supply train coming through from Odessa. Sugar, flour, cigarettes. Clean. And I can make it yours." She narrows her eyes. "And what do you want?" "A safe house," he says. "And a name." She doesn't ask what name. He never deals in details until the ink is dry. She turns to leave. "Zofia," he calls after her. "Remember the boy with the violin in Gdynia? The one we smuggled out in a milk cart?" She pauses. "He plays in Berlin now," Roble says softly. "You saved that? I never forgot." She walks away without answering. Because memory is currency, and she can't afford to spend any today. Back at her flat, she finds Beja sitting on the windowsill, eating pickled eggs and sharpening a pencil into a weapon. "You saw him?" the girl asks. "Yes. He looked like someone who's about to ruin everything." "No," Zofia says. "He looks like someone who already has." Mainstream fact. Soviet presence in Poland by 1946 was more than military. It was economic. Entire industries were redirected to favor Soviet reconstruction. Goods disappeared, routes changed, border checkpoints multiplied. Many people still think the black market existed in opposition to the new regime. But what do you think? What if the black market was the regime, just wearing different shoes? Zofia doesn't sleep that night. She sits at the kitchen table drawing maps, not of streets, of people. Who owes whom? Who whispers too much? Who suddenly has new shoes? She adds a circle around Robles' name, then a question mark beside it. The next morning, she visits the old bakery near Targowa. It's run by a man with too many missing fingers and a habit of humming German lullabies when he thinks no one's listening. He lets her in the back without a word. She kneels near the stove and pulls up a floorboard. Beneath it, 3 envelopes. One marked, "If Baja lives." One marked, "If I disappear." One unmarked. She takes the third, opens it, and pulls out a single sheet of paper. It's blank. She lights it on fire and watches it curl into ash. Sometimes you need to remind the world and yourself that not all secrets are for trading. Back on the street, she bumps into a man with a limp. Harmless until he says, "Lovely weather for wolves." She doesn't stop walking. By nightfall, she's prepared 3 shipments. One of soap, one of ammunition wrapped in cotton, one of blank ration cards sealed in sardine tins. And for Roble, she's prepared a name worth dying for, her own. She seals it in an envelope and writes 2 words on the front: "Try me." The Russian shows up on a Tuesday. It's never good when they arrive on a Tuesday. Too early in the week for mercy. Too far from Sunday to forget anything. He doesn't knock. He doesn't need to. Zofia hears his boots on the stairs long before he reaches her door. Heavy, deliberate, the sound of state-backed certainty. She sets her tea down quietly and straightens the lace doily on the table. Not out of fear, out of habit. He's tall, pale. His eyes are the pale kind of blue that used to be poetic before they started turning up behind revolvers. He wears a smile that's been practiced in mirrors, more teeth than warmth, and his uniform is immaculate. Not Soviet military, not Polish militia. Something in between. Too tailored to be official, too smug to be freelance. "Zofia Picars," he says, not a question. She doesn't nod. "May I come in?" he asks. You're already halfway through the door. He steps in fully, removing his gloves. "They say you make the best rye bread in Warsaw. They also say cabbage cures loneliness. People lie." He chuckles politely and sits without invitation. Then, he places a small envelope on the table. Inside, a photograph. Her. Not recently. This one's from 1943. She's standing in a bread line, but her eyes are trained directly on the man taking the photo. "You've been watched a long time," he says. "Not by me. Not at first." Zofia sips her tea. "And now? Now I'm very interested in you." He doesn't say his name, but the gold star on his collar and the silence he carries in his wake tell her everything. This man is NKVD, Soviet secret police. Worse than the Gestapo, some say. Better dressed, others joke. No one laughs for long. "I'm not here to threaten you," he says. "We both know threats are messy. I'm here with options." That's a word with sharp corners, only if you hold it wrong. He leans forward. His voice lowers to that casual register tyrant's love. "There's a shipment of Western medicine coming through the Czech corridor. We'd prefer it didn't reach the British sectors. And we know you've moved things like this before. Discreetly, efficiently. You've been misinformed." He smiles wider. "I hope not, because the alternative is we burn a lot of bridges, and doors, and homes, looking for someone else who can do what you do." She sets her teacup down and folds her hands. "I'm a baker." He nods. "So bake." He stands, adjusts his coat, and walks to the door, then pauses. "Oh," he adds casually, "one of your children. Baja, is it? She's lovely, fierce. I'd hate to see her get caught up in something she doesn't understand." Zofia doesn't answer. He leaves, and the door clicks shut like the snap of a mousetrap. Mainstream fact. By 1946, the NKVD was deeply entrenched in Polish affairs, using both open intimidation and covert infiltration to monitor dissent and control underground movements. Many people still think Poland's black market survived purely through courage. But what do you think? What survives longer? Courage or strategy? That night, Zofia lights 3 candles. One for Roble, one for the Russian, one for Basia. She keeps them burning while she writes 3 notes. Note 1 goes to a contact in Krakow. It's brief. Do you still have access to the Jewish quarter safe house? Need warm beds? No questions. Note 2 goes to a seamstress in Łódź. Send 6 dresses, unmarked. Include false linings and 2 spare passports. Note 3 she delivers herself. To the coal yard in Żoliborz. She waits near the bins where ash is dumped. The man she meets there has no name. Just a leather coat and a tremor in his right hand that never goes away. He listens without speaking. When she finishes, he nods once and disappears into the smog. Back home, she finds Basia sharpening a spoon into a shiv. Don't you ever do anything normal? Zofia asks. This is normal, Basia replies, not looking up. Zofia doesn't argue. Instead, she sits her down and says softly, You're leaving in 2 days. No, it's not a choice. I don't run. Zofia stares hard. I'm not asking you to run. I'm asking you to survive. There's a difference. Basia's jaw sets. Her fingers curl around the half-sharpened spoon like a lifeline, but eventually she nods. The next morning, a basket of rye loaves is delivered to the Russian's office in the center of town. Hidden inside the largest one, a note. You'll get what you want, but not the way you want it. 3 days later, the shipment he's after disappears, not stolen, redirected. Zofia makes sure it reaches a clinic on the edge of town, where a nurse she once saved from typhus quietly administers penicillin to children with trench lung. The Russian never finds out who rerouted it, but he knows because he receives another basket. Inside, 1 loaf, hollowed, empty. Message received. Weeks pass. Ruble reappears in her flat with a split lip and a fractured plan. Someone sold me out, he spits. Someone in your chain. Zofia stirs her tea. You're sure it wasn't you? You think I'd risk my own neck? She raises an eyebrow. You've done dumber things, like trust men with quiet boots. He slams his hand on the table. I want names. She stands, slow and deliberate. Get out. He hesitates. For a second, his eyes soften, like he remembers something. Maybe the boy with the violin. Maybe her hands after stitching a wound on his thigh in 1942. But he leaves and doesn't come back. Not for a while. Zofia stands alone in her kitchen, arms folded, listening to the tick of the wall clock. The city hums outside like a bad memory, and she begins planning again, because the game has changed, and the wolves are multiplying. There are 3 courtyards in Warsaw, where secrets are traded more often than bread. One smells of onions and diesel. Another is shaped like a horseshoe with no horses. And the third, the one Zofia is walking through this morning, has a broken fountain where children toss stones and pretend they're coins. She passes the fountain and leaves a small parcel under the lip of the basin. Inside is a bar of soap and 2 hand-rolled cigarettes. Payment. Not for goods, but for silence, because someone saw Roble speaking to a man in a Czech military coat. And someone else saw Basia trailing them. And someone, maybe Zofia herself, has started to wonder just how many pieces of the board she really controls. When she returns home, she finds a piece of chalk on her doorstep. Drawn on the wood, a wolf's head. Nothing elaborate, just a sketch, barely more than a doodle, but she knows the mark. It's the calling card of an old crew from the pre-war underworld. Wilkie Z. Podwale, or the Wolves of Podwale Street. They were legends once, known for disappearing contraband and snatching enemies from dinner tables without leaving a fork out of place. Zofia always thought they died off or scattered during the war. Apparently not. She picks up the chalk and rubs it away with her sleeve. That night, she meets Magda in the attic above the sewing factory. The floor creaks like it remembers every secret ever whispered there. "There's pressure," Magda says, lighting a cigarette with hands that don't shake. "From who?" "Take your pick. UB, Soviets, maybe even our own. Too many hands in the same stew." Zofia leans against a beam. "We need to tighten the roots, cut dead weight. And if Roble brings one more ghost into this, he already has," Magda says quietly. "He's dealing with Czarny Rafał." Zofia straightens. That name hasn't crossed her ears in years. Rafał the Black. He used to run half the cigarette trade in Gdansk before turning informant for the highest bidder. He's dangerous, not because of his violence, but because of his patience. He waits, then poisons. Slowly. "He'll want blood," Zofia says. "He wants you," Magda corrects. "He thinks you're too clean." Zofia laughs, soft, bitter. "Clean? I barter penicillin with men who eat rats for breakfast. That makes you efficient, not dirty." Mainstream fact. After the war, as Poland fell deeper under Soviet control, former resistance fighters were often labeled criminals if they didn't fall in line. Many people still think the underground ended in 1945. But what do you think? Can an organization built in silence ever truly die? Or does it just whisper under a new name? Back at her flat, Zofia opens her coat lining and removes 3 small vials. One is actual morphine. The other 2 are water laced with poppy oil, convincing enough to fool soldiers, not enough to kill. She places them into the false bottom of a bread tin marked raisins. Then she writes 2 letters. Letter 1 is short. "You were warned, now you're watched." It goes to Roble. Letter 2 is longer. A set of instructions involving a diversion at the market, a switch at the soup kitchen, and a handoff at the church near Pilsudski Square. The recipient is Basia, because if wolves are circling, it's time to let them smell another predator. At sunrise, Basia slips through the stalls like smoke. She carries a basket with nothing but onions and 1 sheet of waxed paper, folded twice. The contact meets her behind the tannery. His coat is new, his boots are not. He nods, and she passes the note. He doesn't realize she's watching his reflection in the window. Doesn't realize the child selling newspapers nearby is on Zofia's payroll. Doesn't realize this isn't a delivery, it's a test. 3 days later, that contact ends up in a ditch. Not dead, just missing his teeth and his fingernails. Message received. Zofia visits the bakery under the guise of checking the yeast quality. The ovens are hot, the bread passable, and the gossip sour. But in the back, the real business waits. Under flour sacks, coded ledgers, ration slips, and a ledger of names. Not real names, nicknames, symbols, positions. She crosses out one, then circles another. There's a knock at the rear door. It's the Russian, the NKVD officer from before. Still smiling. Still wearing gloves. "You made quite a mess," he says cheerfully. "You told me to bake?" He steps closer. "Rafał is a problem. Yours, technically. But he's bitten one of our assets." Zofia doesn't ask what kind of asset. "You want him gone?" she asks. "I want him relocated." "To?" He smiles. "Somewhere that doesn't ask questions, like a swamp. Or Siberia." Zofia nods slowly. "It'll cost you." "Oh," he says, amused. "You think I pay in money?" "No," she replies. "You'll pay in names. 1 name. The person who's feeding Rafał my movements." The Russian's smile freezes. Just for a second. Then he tips an imaginary hat and disappears into the alley like cigarette smoke in cold air. Zofia watches him go, then whispers to herself. That's the second time he didn't say no. Back at home, she writes a note to herself. "If I disappear, check the cellar." the one with the red tiles. They're watching the attic now. She tears it up and feeds it into the stove, just in case. The cellar with the red tiles isn't just a hiding place, it's a memory. Zofia hasn't stepped foot inside it since the winter of '44, back when snow piled in the corners like mold, and the city above was breathing its last under the German retreat. She had hidden a boy there once, a courier with burned hands who carried a map drawn on his thigh. She never knew if he made it out, but she still remembers the way he whispered, "Thank you," through broken teeth. Tonight, she returns, not with a boy, but with a body, not dead, not yet. It's rubble, dragged by Magda and a shoemaker named Piotrek, who doesn't ask questions, only drinks. His lip is split again. His coat is missing. He smells like betrayal and vodka, which in Warsaw is the usual cologne for men who think they can run faster than consequences. They throw him onto the cot in the corner. He groans but doesn't open his eyes. Zofia kneels beside him, slow and deliberate, and places a cloth soaked in vinegar against his brow. "You got sloppy," she says. He mumbles something that sounds like, "I had no choice." "That's funny," she murmurs. "You always have a choice. You just never liked living with it." She doesn't hit him. Not yet. Instead, she lights a candle and places it at the edge of the table. Just enough glow to see, not enough to cast clear shadows. The room smells of stone and damp secrets. "He sold a name," Magda says from the door. "Not yours, yet, but Basia's, to Czarny Rafał." Zofia doesn't react. Not outwardly. But inside, something sharp and ancient unfolds, like a blade that hasn't been unsheathed in years. "Basia, still too young to shave, still too smart to die." Zofia nods. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 days. He sent someone after her." Zofia stands, turns to Piotrek. "Get the van, the bakery one. Pull the false floorboards. She leaves tonight." "And him?" Piotrek gestures to Rubel, who groans again. "He stays," Zofia says. Rubel coughs. "I didn't know Rafał was going to go after the girl." She silences him with a look. The kind of look that makes wolves remember they were once dogs. "You think you were protecting me?" she says, voice low. "You handed him a child." He tries to sit up. Fails. "I was trying to keep us both alive." Zofia crouches beside him. "You don't get to say us anymore." She leaves the cellar, locks the door, and pockets the key. Outside, it's raining. The kind of slow, miserable rain that doesn't soak, just clings like guilt. She meets Basia near the tram depot. The girl's already packed. She carries a small bag, a fake birth certificate, and a dagger that looks like it used to be part of a farming tool. "I'm not running," Basia says. "You're not," Zofia replies. "You're relocating." "For how long?" Zofia sighs. "Until people stop looking for you. Or forget your face. Whichever comes first." Basia stares at her. Then after a long pause, "Will you be here when I come back?" Zofia doesn't lie. "If I can be." Mainstream fact. In 1946, children involved in underground operations were frequently targeted by both state forces and criminal networks. Many were absorbed into Soviet re-education programs. Others simply vanished. Many people still think post-war Poland protected its orphans. But what do you think? Can a country still bleeding protect anything? Zofia watches Basia disappear into the back of the van, bundled under bags of grain and empty bread crates. The driver, a mute man with a soft cough, nods once and drives into the fog. She stands in the rain long after the taillights vanish. She walks home slowly, stepping over puddles and pieces of her old life. At her door, a package waits, wrapped in black cloth. No name. Inside, a photograph. Her again. Recent. 2 days ago. Outside the church, speaking to a man she doesn't recognize. Underneath, written in red pencil, "You're not as hidden as you think." She doesn't burn it. Not yet. Instead, she tucks it into her coat, then pours herself a drink that burns twice. Once going down, once remembering. That night she dreams of Stefan. He's standing on a balcony that no longer exists, holding a glass of wine he never liked, looking at her like he's just realized something he should have known all along. When she wakes, she writes 3 more names into her notebook, 2 with question marks, 1 with a cross. Then she closes it and starts boiling water. For the first time in weeks, she makes rye bread. Not the kind for selling, the kind that smells like home, because tomorrow will require strength, and the wolves are still circling. There's something sacred about a loaf of bread baked in silence. Zofia wakes before sunrise, not because she must, but because her hands remember the rhythm before her thoughts catch up. She grinds caraway seeds, measures flour by touch, and stokes the oven slowly, like coaxing an old friend back from sleep. The kitchen hums with warmth, a rare thing these days. She bakes 6 loaves. 2 are real, 4 are not. The fake loaves are hollowed, carefully, with the skill of someone who's hidden maps in jam jars and bullets in rosary boxes. She lines the cavities with wax paper, places 3 forged documents inside one, a revolver in another, and a bundle of ration coupons in the third. The last one carries nothing but names, 6 of them, written in ink that runs if you breathe too hard. At exactly 6:42 a.m., she walks them across town in a crate, wrapped in a linen cloth and tied with twine. She moves like a delivery girl. Invisible. Boring. Just one more woman carrying food no one can afford. The recipient is a woman named Helena, who runs a soup kitchen for veterans that has never actually served soup. The loaves vanish into the back room, where a man with no tongue slices them open with surgical precision and files the contents into 3 separate ledgers, 1 in ink, 1 in code, and 1 in his memory. Warsaw's underworld doesn't run on bullets anymore. It runs on bread. Later that day, Zofia takes a tram to the edge of Pawishla, where the river stinks of iron and fish guts and hope long forgotten. She walks to a tenement building painted the color of ash, climbs 5 flights of stairs with no handrail, and knocks 3 times on a door marked 6A. An old man answers. He blinks once, then nods. No words. He lets her in. Inside, the walls are lined with crates. Some say flour, others say light bulbs. None are what they claim. She walks past them all to a table in the corner. On it, a bottle of ink, a faded map of the city, and a metal box filled with coins? No, not coins. Capsules. Zofia picks one up, weighs it in her hand. Still viable? She asks. The old man nods. These capsules contain cyanide, insurance, for messengers too valuable to be captured. She takes 3. Back at home, she places them in a jar labeled Rose Hip Tea. Then she stares at her reflection in the window for a long moment, watching how her shoulders don't slump like they used to. She's becoming the person people whisper about, and it's starting to show. There's a knock at the door. Not the firm rap of a soldier, not the frantic tap of a child. It's a hesitant knock. She opens it to find Jagoda, wet, breathless, eyes wide. "They found Piotrek," she says. Zofia stiffens. "Where?" "In a coal sack by the river." She doesn't ask if he's dead. The answer is always yes when people are found in sacks. Jagoda hesitates, then pulls a scrap of fabric from her coat. It's a patch from Piotrek's jacket. Sewn into the hem is a sliver of paper, or it has ears inside. Magda? Zofia closes the door slowly. Magda, the one she's trusted longest. The one with calloused hands and a scar under her lip from that night in 42 when they smuggled dynamite inside communion wine. Zofia doesn't believe it, but she doesn't disbelieve it either. She goes to the ledger. Magda's name is circled once. Now it gets a second circle and a question mark. Mainstream fact. During Stalin's push for absolute control in Eastern Europe, the use of moles within resistance and underground organizations was common practice. Trusted allies were flipped through threats or bribes. Many people still think betrayal came from the outside. But what do you think? When the walls have ears, which ones whisper back? That evening, Zofia lights a cigarette she doesn't smoke and walks the block twice. On her third pass, she notices the car, unmarked, idle. 2 men inside, one reading a newspaper upside down, the other chewing sunflower seeds like a metronome. Soviet. She walks past them, into a butcher shop, orders a cut of meat she can't afford, then passes a note to the butcher's son with the change. The note reads, "Red car, no plates, been there 3 hours, watching." She doesn't need a reply. The car is gone the next morning, replaced with another one, this one green. That night, Magda shows up at her door. She's wearing gloves. Zofia notices. "Cold?" she asks, not moving from the threshold. Magda smiles. "Paranoia doesn't suit you. It suits everyone these days." They sit, drink tea, watch each other. Magda leans back. "You think I'd sell out Piotrek? After everything?" Zofia doesn't answer. Magda slams her cup down. "That's what this is, isn't it? Some test? Did you pass?" Magda stares at her for a long time. Then she sighs. "Someone's playing us, Zofia. It's not me, but it's someone close." Zofia nods, just once. Then she pulls out the photograph from the package left at her door. "Do you recognize the man I'm speaking to?" Magda takes it, squints, then blinks. "Zofia," she says slowly, "that's no man." "What? That's Zhenya. A woman, Soviet, dresses as a man, collects data for Moscow. They call her the librarian." Zofia exhales. "Then why is she watching me? Because you're the only one left who hasn't chosen a side." Zofia pours another cup of tea. "But I have," she says. Magda looks at her. "And which side is that?" Zofia meets her eyes steady. "My own." The snow comes early. October hasn't yet closed its eyes, but Warsaw is already wearing its winter coat, a ragged thing stitched with soot and silence. Snow dusts the rooftops, clings to the tram wires like breath held too long. The city sighs beneath it, not in relief, in resignation. Zofia stands in her kitchen, the window open just enough to let in the cold. She watches her breath fog the air and thinks, this is how ghosts speak. She hasn't seen the Russian in 2 weeks. She hasn't heard from Bazia. Roble remains in the cellar, or at least she assumes he does. She hasn't checked. She's too busy drawing maps, not of the city, but of the people. She's begun pinning faces to her wall. Small photographs, names beneath them. Threads of colored string connecting who talks to whom, who trades with whom, who disappears too conveniently after too many questions. Red string for allies, blue for uncertain, black for dead. Magda is still blue, barely. But tonight her position will be decided, because tonight Zofia is setting a trap. She walks to the bakery under the pretense of checking the flour shipment. The boy behind the counter, 9, maybe 10, greets her with a nod far too formal for his age. She passes behind the oven, slips through the back room, and climbs a narrow staircase into the garret above. Inside, Helena waits. So does Zions, the locksmith, and 2 others, faces she trusts enough to bring into this. They sit around a map of Warsaw etched into the back of a wardrobe door. Candlelight dances across the lines like fire moving through trenches. Zofia speaks first. "Someone's selling our roots. Not for profit, for pressure." Zions grunts. "EB? Maybe. Maybe Soviets, maybe both." Helena taps her cigarette into a teacup. "How do you want to find them?" Zofia lifts a parcel. Inside, a forged ration manifest and a fake ID stamped with a real Soviet seal. She places it on the table. "We leak this, through one person. If it comes back to us, we'll know." No one asks who the person is, but everyone knows. Magda. The meeting ends quietly. No votes, no raised voices, just shared looks. That's how decisions are made in this world, like secrets whispered between ghosts. Mainstream fact. By late 1946, Polish resistance cells had fragmented. Many were forced into a double life, working with Soviets by day, resisting by night. Many people still think betrayal in the underground came from the weak. But what do you think? What if the greatest danger came from the ones trying to survive both sides? 3 days later, the manifest appears on a Soviet checkpoint ledger. Too perfect, too fast. Zofia receives confirmation via a pigeon. Yes, a pigeon. Delivered to the bakery rooftop in a tin box with one leg banded in copper. The note is simple. Magda spoke. Document appeared. East checkpoint. Your move. She waits until nightfall, then walks to the attic where Magda stores her radio. Magda is there, tuning frequencies that don't sing anymore. You've been busy, Zofia says. Magda doesn't turn. So have you. Care to explain the manifest? Silence. I wanted insurance, Magda says finally, in case everything burned. Who do you work for? No one, Magda says. Then slower. Not anymore. Zofia steps closer. But you did. Magda nods. They promised immunity, safety, for my sister, for her son. Zofia's voice is soft. And did they keep that promise? Magda looks at her then. No. The radio crackles. Outside, snow falls harder. Zofia doesn't call for guards, doesn't pull a gun. She lights a cigarette, passes it to Magda and says, You're done. No more names, no more notes. You go quiet. And if I don't? Zofia exhales smoke through her nose. Then you won't hear the shot when it comes. Magda nods and doesn't show up the next day, or the next. Zofia doesn't search. She just adds a red string from Magda's photo to a nail on the edge of the wall, where no other strings go. Beja finally writes, not a letter, a photograph. It arrives tucked inside a bottle of milk delivered by mistake. Zofia almost throws it out. The photo shows a coastline, a boat, 3 people waving. One of them is Beja, alive, still stubborn. Zofia places the photo in the bottom of a drawer and locks it. She can't afford to feel relief yet. That afternoon, someone pounds on the door. It's Rubble, barely standing, leaning on the frame like a man begging the wood to hold him up. Help, he rasps. Zofia lets him fall, then drags him inside. He's burned, bruised, one eye swollen shut. Raphael? She asks. No, he wheezes. Worse. She hands him a cloth. Start talking. I ran. After the cellar. Tried to disappear. But someone knew where I'd go. Someone knew everything. Roots. Faces. Even Beja's real name. Zofia freezes. Who? Not Magda, he croaks. Not me. He looks at her, bleeding. Honest. It's someone else. Inside your circle. Deeper. Zofia pours vodka over his wounds. He screams. I need a name. He passes out before he can answer. She writes one more name into her ledger, then walks into the kitchen and begins baking. Rye. This time with salt, because winter is here, and salt preserves the dead. The snow won't stop. By now it's piled knee-high in the alleys and blackened at the edges with coal dust and tire grease. The city looks less like a place and more like an echo. Soft shapes beneath white, broken lines where roads should be. The crows have returned. They always come before the worst. Zofia sits at her kitchen table, watching wax drip from a single candle. The light flickers against her ledger, now cluttered with faces and not enough answers. One of the photos has gone missing. She notices immediately. It was the one of Zayons, the locksmith. She doesn't like that. She gets up and checks the window latch, still locked. Door, bolted. Nothing disturbed. Still, she knows someone's been inside. It's a feeling in the air, a temperature shift, like someone else's breath still lingers on her walls. She moves to the sink and checks behind the false panel in the cabinet. The tin of capsules is untouched, but beneath it, an unfamiliar envelope. No handwriting, no wax seal, just 2 words printed in mechanical type. We know. She burns it in the sink without opening it further. It's not a message. It's a warning. And that means the librarian has returned. The Soviet agent who passes as a man. Zhenya. The one Magda recognized. The one who knew too much and said nothing. Zofia hasn't seen her in weeks, but her absence feels like a countdown. Later that day, Helena meets her at the public bathhouse, both of them wrapped in towels and steam. Zofia leans in, whispering, "The circle's collapsing." Helena nods. "I've heard. Jarny Rafał's boys are dead. All 3 of them. All? Burned. Basement behind an abandoned tannery in Praga." Zofia processes this slowly. That wasn't her doing. Which means someone is cleaning up. Maybe Zhenya. Maybe someone else. Either way, it's no longer about smuggling. It's about silence. Zofia dries her hands, pulls out a small card from beneath her towel. An address, a date, no name. She slides it across the bench to Helena. "New drop site. We clear the ledgers, move everyone. No more central planning. We fracture." Helena raises an eyebrow. "You're scattering the network?" "No," Zofia says. "I'm removing the parts they can trace. Mainstream fact. Toward the end of 1946, Polish underground networks, especially those not aligned with Moscow, were forced to splinter. Coordination was deadly. Independence became the only protection. Many people still think resistance requires unity. But what do you think? Is survival found in standing together or apart? That night, Zofia visits the tailor, a man with hands like birds and eyes like buttons. He measures her in silence, then presents her with a new coat, gray as always. But this one has a double lining, a slit pocket beneath the hem, and a single name embroidered inside the collar. Stefan. She doesn't react, just nods, pays him with a bar of soap, and walks out into the snow. The city hums around her. Too quiet, too watchful. Even the dogs seem uncertain which alleys are theirs anymore. She walks to the old schoolhouse turned watch post. 2 young men guard the door with rifles that look older than both of them combined. She asks for the basement. Inside she finds Zayants, alive, but tied to a chair. His face is clean, too clean. He's expecting her. "Zofia," he says almost warmly. "I was beginning to think I didn't rate a visit." She says nothing, circles him slowly. On the table nearby, a notebook, one of hers, stolen. He grins. "You hide your things well." "But not well enough for locksmiths?" "How long?" she asks quietly. "Since the beginning," he admits. "But I didn't know it would come to this. I thought I could feed them scraps, keep the real core safe." "You gave them Piotrek," Zayants winces. "Not by choice." She leans down, whispers, "You always have a choice." He nods. "I chose wrong." Outside, snow taps at the windows like a nervous guest. Zofia stands, turns to Helena. "Cut him loose." Helena hesitates. Zofia's voice hardens. "He's not going to die today." Zayants looks up startled. "You're letting me go?" "No," she says. "I'm sending you to Odessa, with a forged name and 1 suitcase. Why? Because I want the Soviets to think you're still useful. And because you owe me 1 more lie." She hands him a sealed envelope. "Deliver this to Zhenya, in person." He swallows. "You think she won't shoot me?" "I think she might. But if she does, you'll finally serve a purpose." That night, Zofia bakes bread. Real bread. No maps, no weapons. Just flour, water, and salt. She gives 1 loaf to an old man begging by the statue of Copernicus, another to a girl with frostbitten cheeks. The last one she keeps for herself and eats with her hands, slowly, like someone trying to remember what peace tastes like. The envelope she gave Zayants wasn't a threat. Not exactly. Inside it, Zhenya would find a letter, handwritten, which Zofia rarely did. The script would be clean, even, precise. No anger, no pleading, just a quiet invitation. "You've watched me long enough. Let's talk. You choose the place. I'll come alone. But remember, I do not bluff. If I don't walk out, neither do you. It's not a declaration of war. It's a proposal between professionals. She sends it not because she trusts Zhenya to accept, but because she's tired of playing a game where the rules change every morning. The next 3 days are strangely calm. No visitors, no messages, no children knocking with warnings folded in candy wrappers. She spends the quiet scrubbing every surface in her flat, removing soot, fingerprints, years of exhaustion. Not for cleanliness, but for control. A woman with clean walls, she tells herself, can't be cornered. On the 4th day, it arrives, tucked into a bag of flour delivered to the bakery. No name, no note, just a key. Old brass, with the number 9 etched into it. Zofia doesn't need instructions. She knows the building. She's passed it 100 times. A boarding house near the train yard, long abandoned, recently repainted. No one stays there unless they mean to disappear. She arrives at dusk. Room 9 is at the end of a narrow corridor. The light bulb above the door flickers as if deciding whether it wants to help. She knocks once. The door opens inward. No sound. Zhenya stands by the window, dressed as always in that ambiguous uniform. Gray wool, polished boots, a posture that suggests both poetry and executions. No words. Not at first. Zofia steps inside, closes the door behind her. They study each other like two sides of the same coin. I expected you to send a knife, Zhenya says. I considered it. Zhenya nods as if approving the honesty. You've been busy, she adds, motioning toward the ledger tucked under Zofia's arm. It's yours, Zofia says. A gift. Zhenya raises an eyebrow. You're surrendering? Zofia smiles just faintly. I'm trading. She sets the ledger on the table. Inside, every contact, every name, but coded, jumbled, disguised in metaphors no machine can decipher. Zhenya flips a page, frowns. This is a list of bakery ingredients? Zofia shrugs. Only if you don't know how to bake. Zhenya almost laughs. Almost. You want what exactly? Room to breathe, Zofia replies. I'm done growing. I just want to live. And in return, you give me a puzzle. No, I give you a story you can tell your bosses. A win, Zhenya thinks. The room is quiet, save for the occasional groan of pipes. Then she sits, not as a threat, as an equal. I was raised in Rostov, Zhenya says softly. The winters there made your teeth crack. I watched men freeze on benches with their eyes open. You know what saved us? Tea? Lies, Zhenya says. We learned to lie before we could walk. Not because we were bad, because the truth had teeth. Zofia listens. Doesn't interrupt. I envy you, Zhenya adds. Why? Because you made your empire with bread. I made mine with knives. Mainstream fact. The Soviet Union, through the NKVD and later the KGB, embedded deep into the post-war Polish resistance and economy. They recruited those they couldn't break. Many people still think these agents were inhuman. But what do you think? Isn't fear just another kind of hunger? Zofia leans forward. If I leave, truly disappear, what happens to the people I leave behind? Zhenya says nothing for a while. Then, if I say they'll be safe, will you believe me? No. Good, then we understand each other. Zofia stands. So? Zhenya nods toward the door. You'll get 3 days. After that, you're a ghost. Zofia turns to leave, pauses. I lied about the ledger, she says. It's worthless. I know. Zofia leaves room 9 and doesn't look back. That night, she returns home to find her flat exactly as she left it. Too quiet. On her kitchen table, a single rose, dried, gray, wrapped around the stem, a small slip of paper with 2 words. 3 days. She eats her last real meal that night. Hard-boiled eggs, rye bread, pickled beets. Simple food. The kind that reminds you you're still alive. Then she begins packing. 1 dress, 2 forged IDs, no photographs. At dawn, she burns the ledger. Every string, every face, every memory pinned to the wall. The fire smells like paper and goodbye. Zofia walks into her final Warsaw morning as if it's just another Tuesday. She wears gray as always, coated with a fine dusting of flour that might be real or just part of the performance. Her gloves are old, but clean. Her boots are polished. Her scarf smells of rosemary and smoke. No one looks twice, and that's the point, because invisibility, when worn properly, is warmer than any coat. The train station isn't far, but she doesn't go there directly. First, she takes a slow walk through the heart of the city, the ruins and the alleyways, the places that once whispered her name and now barely murmur. She pauses outside the bakery but doesn't go in. She passes the old soup line, where new faces wait with the same hunger. She stops briefly at the bench in Pałąki Cemetery, the third one from the gate. There's no one there. Perfect. She leaves nothing behind, except a folded handkerchief tucked into the seam of the bench. Inside, a final map, written in code, with 3 marked locations. The last message she'll ever send. By the time she arrives at the station, the sky is bruised with early morning frost. She carries only a satchel. Inside, a loaf of bread, a spare pair of gloves, and a passport that says she's a widow named Hanna Rojanska from Radom, traveling to visit her sister near the border. The guard barely glances at her papers. She boards the train and disappears. The carriage smells of old cigarettes and wet wool. Children cry somewhere down the line. An accordion plays from a compartment 3 cars over, a slow tune, oddly cheerful. Zofia sits by the window and doesn't watch the city fade. She already said goodbye. Somewhere, deep in the woods outside Lublin, the train slows for no reason anyone can explain. Zofia steps down. There's no platform, no station, just snow and silence, waiting for her. She walks into the forest without a trail and doesn't come back. And so, the trail ends. Not with gunfire or betrayal, but with snow underfoot and silence above. Zofia Pekars, the war widow who once bartered buttons for bread and morphine for mercy, walks into history the same way she walked through it, quietly, without asking for applause. Perhaps she reaches safety. Perhaps her name becomes one whispered only at night, in kitchens where flour dust still hangs in the air like a memory. Or perhaps she never existed at all, except in the spaces between records, an unclaimed face behind forged documents, a ghost in someone else's photograph. Warsaw continues, of course. The city rebuilds itself in layers, brick over ash, paint over bullet holes, truth over silence. And somewhere, in the back room of a bakery, a child asks about the woman with the quiet steps and the sharp eyes who always had rye bread when no one else did. The answer, if it comes at all, will be soft. She fed the city when it had no mouth. A myth, perhaps, but then again, aren't all survivors part myth? And so, tonight, as you settle into your sheets, with the hush of night around you, and the weight of someone else's world slipping from your shoulders, remember Zofia, not as a criminal, nor a saint, just a woman who knew the price of silence and paid it crumb by crumb. Let your eyes drift. Let the past settle. Let the wolves keep their distance, because the fire is out and the bread is warm. Sleep well. The smoke rises from the chimney in thin, even threads, not frantic, not desperate, controlled. Zofia watches it from across the street, her new scarf pulled tight over her chin. The house is small, tucked into a narrow lane near the river, disguised as a workshop for broken radios. In truth, no radios have been fixed there in years. But what does get repaired, quietly, patiently, is children. Is 3 of them so far. Soon 4. Inside the house, the heat is patchy and the floorboards groan like old knees. But there's a pot of soup on the stove and bread tucked into clean cloths, and that's more than most in Warsaw can boast. Zofia enters without knocking. The children have learned not to startle. Fear wastes energy. The first is Oleg, age 11. Voice gone quiet after a soldier stepped on his throat during a roundup. He counts using his fingers and clicks his tongue in rhythms that only make sense to him. He has a genius for hiding things. Notes, razor blades, a pistol once, and has never been caught. The second is Marek, younger, missing 3 toes, born with a face too soft for war. But he runs faster than any courier Zofia's ever met. He knows every hole and every fence between the Vistula and the old town. The third is Ninka. Her eyes are too large for her face, and her stare makes adults uncomfortable. She doesn't speak unless absolutely necessary. When she does, it's usually the truth, weaponized. Zofia suspects she will one day lead something that frightens even her. They don't call her Mama. That's not who she is. They call her Pani Zofia, a title with just enough distance. Today she brings them coins, not real ones, wooden tokens she carved and marked with chalk. She scatters them across the floor and sits cross-legged. "What's the rule?" she asks. Marek answers first. "Red ones are bullets, white ones are food. And blue? Bribes. Excellent," she says. "Now, how fast can you count 10 bribes and hide 6 bullets under the floorboard?" They race, not with joy, but with focus. This isn't a game. It's training. The rules are simple. Learn the currency of fear. Know the cost of every favor. Trust only when your hand is already on the door. Zofia watches them with something that might be pride or dread. It's hard to tell. The children remind her of shadows cast before the fire even begins. Later, she sits Marek down and presses a folded note into his hand. "You leave tomorrow." He stiffens. "Why me?" "Because you're the fastest." "Where?" "South, across the river. Take the medicine. Don't stop for anyone." He swallows. "Even police?" "Especially police." She ruffles his hair. Only slightly. Not enough to make him feel small. That night, she burns her gloves. The pair she wore during a trade with a contact who disappeared 3 days ago. She doesn't take chances. The children sleep on mats by the stove, their bodies curled like commas. Zofia sits nearby, awake, sewing, listening. A knock at the door comes just after midnight. She opens it with a pistol in her apron. It's a girl, 14, wet from the snow, half-starved. She doesn't ask to come in, just says, "They told me you might let me stay." Zofia lets her in. No name is exchanged. Just dry clothes and a bowl of soup that smells of cabbage and cumin. Mainstream fact. By late 1946, thousands of children were orphaned or abandoned across post-war Poland. Many were absorbed into unofficial networks of care, hiding places run by widows, veterans, or smugglers. Many people still think only official shelters saved these children. But what do you think? Who really raised a generation born in ruins? Over the next week, the house fills. 4 becomes 6, then 7. Some stay a night, others longer. They all learn something. How to stay unseen, how to find exits, how to count coins that don't buy candy. But choices. Zofia doesn't ask for loyalty. She earns it by giving them names again. Small ones, secret ones, names that make them real. She hangs a sheet across the hallway and tells them it's a curtain. But they know it's a line. On one side, who they were. On the other, who they'll become. When Marek returns, frostbitten but smiling, Zofia lets him sleep on her cot and watches the others huddle beside him. They pass the note he brought like a holy relic. It reads, "The bridge is clear, the shipment moved." But beneath it, in smaller handwriting, just one word. "Thanks." She places the note in a tin beside the stove. One more ember in a fire she cannot let die. The first time the Urzon Bezpieczeństwa, the UB, comes to Zofia's house, they don't knock. They tap, delicately, like someone checking to see if the door is made of paper or bone. It's a cold Tuesday. Snow slouches down the drain pipes. Zofia has just finished teaching Oleg how to fold bandages from torn sheets when she hears it. The sound of leather shoes hesitating on the threshold. She opens the door herself. No one answers that kind of knock but her. 2 men wait on the stoop. Matching coats, matching haircuts, matching expressions. Polite, predatory. One smiles. Pani Zofia, yes? We're here to talk. She doesn't move. If it's about bread, I'm afraid we're out. They laugh, not kindly. The taller one lifts a folder. We just have a few questions. She doesn't invite them in, but she doesn't close the door either. That's the dance. Then ask. The questions begin like cold water. Do you own this property? Do you employ any minors? Do you have knowledge of any unsanctioned activity related to foreign goods? Each one comes wrapped in politeness, but the thread underneath is sharp. She answers them all, slowly, correctly, boringly. It's a performance, and Zofia plays the role perfectly. A woman barely surviving. Generous to orphans, yes, but always within the law. A baker, a widow, someone whose tragedy is visible in her wrinkles. Then they shift tactics. We've heard rumors, the shorter man says, his fingers tapping the folder, that your house is a stop for certain couriers. Rumors travel faster than truth, she replies. And truth, he asks. She shrugs, arrives eventually. The taller man glances past her, trying to see inside. The curtain is drawn. The house smells of bread and nothing else. They leave without incident, but the moment the door shuts, Zofia moves. In one breath, she signals the children. Silent sweep. It's rehearsed. Within 5 minutes, false floors are emptied, codes erased, medicine flushed, ration cards burned. The house becomes just a house again. Later, she checks the attic. The escape bag is ready, as always, but something's missing. One of the vials from the rose-hip tea tin. Cyanide. Baseous. Someone's taken it. She sits on the cot and exhales through her nose. Not panic, just calculation. She expected the UB eventually. They're always late, but they never skip a dance. The fact they came now means one thing. Someone in their ranks finally opened a file with her name on it and circled it. The next day, she goes to the old greenhouse behind the hospital. It's abandoned mostly. Vines claw the walls. Glass panes hang like broken promises. There, in the rear, stands a man in a priest's collar. He's not a priest. His name is Janek. Before the war, he sold watches. During it, he smuggled people. Now he sells silence. He listens to her report. The visit, the missing vial, the smell of caution in the air. Then he nods once and says, "It's time." I know. We scatter the children? No, she says. We hide them in plain sight. That week, each child receives a new role. Oleg becomes a deaf apprentice to a tinsmith on Tomka Street. Marek is adopted, on forged papers, by a tailor with a gambling problem and a good heart. Ninka becomes the niece of a widowed actress who tells the UB she needs company to fend off hallucinations. The youngest girl, still unnamed, is smuggled in a laundry cart to a school in Poznan. Zofia does not cry. She smooths hair, adjusts collars, tells jokes she doesn't find funny. Only once, when Ninka looks back and says, "Will I see you again?" does her voice break. "If you don't," Zofia says gently, "it's because I did my job." Mainstream fact. The UB, later known as the SB, was Poland's post-war secret police, notorious for surveillance, interrogation, and the suppression of any resistance to Soviet influence. Many people still think its eyes were only on the loud. But what do you think? How many quiet rebels were catalogued, erased, never even named? That night, Zofia visits a photographer's shop in the old town. She sits for one picture. Black dress, hair pinned, eyes straight into the lens. When the print develops, she does not smile. She leaves with 10 copies. On the back of each, she writes a different name. She mails them to different cities, a message to whoever is watching. You know my face, but not my game. The next morning, she finds a note on her door, typed impersonal. Stay silent, stay safe. She reads it once, burns it twice, and continues baking, because some wars end with treaties, but some just shift into colder seasons. He arrives limping, not dramatically, just enough to make you notice the silver cane tapping with each step. It's deliberate, like a drum beat meant for someone else's funeral. Zofia watches him approach through the bakery window, her hands still dusted with flour. The children are gone now, scattered into safer stories, and her days have returned to the rhythms of mixing, kneading, waiting. But not today. The man with the silver cane is not a customer. He opens the door with one smooth pull, like he owns the hinges. Pani Zofia, he says, voice honeyed with a southern Polish drawl. At last, he looks like something out of a theater production. Tailored suit too sharp for winter, hair slicked like a man who remembers mirrors, and eyes that smile independently of his mouth. She doesn't reply. She gestures instead, to the table in the corner, the one she keeps clean for uninvited guests. He sits without removing his coat. The cane rests beside him, but Zofia knows better. It's not just for walking. It never is. I hear you've had visitors, he says. UB boys, Russian shadows, little ghosts with big secrets. She pours tea. He doesn't drink. I'm not here for bread, he adds. I'm here for terms. Name, she says. He grins. They call me Julian. Sometimes, when it's convenient. Zofia nods slowly. Krakow? He chuckles. You do read the footnotes. Yes. Once upon a time, I ran a few favors through Kazimierz, but the world shifted. It tends to. Julian leans forward. I'm not your enemy. You're not my friend. No, he says. But I could be your future. He lays a photograph on the table. It's her, recent, standing near the train station. From behind, a long coat, a slight tilt of the head, recognizable only to someone who knows how you carry your regret. Beneath the photo, a name. Zofia Zielińska, suspected courier, a UB file. Stolen. Zofia stares at it. Julian continues. They're closing the case. They have the root. They know about the boy, the priest, the capsule tin, the ledger. He smiles thinly. But they don't know about me. Zofia folds her hands. And what do you want? He spreads his fingers like a magician mid-trick. A deal. I have a train leaving Warsaw in 6 days, headed south. Empty manifest. Sealed containers. If I say your name isn't on the list, it isn't. If I say your ledger burned, it did. And in return, he picks up his cane, taps it once against the floor. You give me the bakery, Zofia laughs. Not loudly, just once, like a sigh in the shape of defiance. It's not worth much, she says. Don't be modest, Julian replies. It's a perfect front. Trade happens here, quietly, predictably. Customers come, customers go. The flour isn't always flour. She says nothing. He leans closer. You're tired. You've buried enough. Let me inherit the smoke. Zofia studies him. His hands, too clean. His eyes, too dry. He doesn't smell like fire. He smells like velvet and lies. Mainstream fact. Post-war criminal networks in Poland often absorbed black market operations run by wartime resistance members. Many of these transitions were negotiated, not seized, offering aging operatives a way out. Many people still think power always ends in blood. But what do you think? What's the price of peace if it arrives wearing someone else's shoes? Julian stands. No answer now. I understand. But you should know. If I take over, the children stay fed, the books stay closed, and no one digs further. He tips an invisible hat. And if I say no? Zofia asks. He shrugs. Then someone else takes it, someone messier. He leaves with the same measured steps, the cane never skipping. That night, Zofia doesn't sleep. She sits in the dark, reading the stolen UB file. The details are shallow but real. Movements tracked, Names mispronounced but close enough to sting. They know, or will soon. She lights a candle, pulls out the old tin. Inside, the last capsule. Not for Merrick, not for Baja, for her. She doesn't plan to use it, but holding it centers her. The next day, she bakes. A full batch. 15 loaves, all hollow. 12 go to contacts. 2 are buried under coal in the alley for emergency retrieval. One she keeps. She delivers it to Julian's train yard at dawn. He opens it himself. Finds nothing inside. Just a scrap of paper with 3 words. I'll decide later. He smiles like he's already won. But Zofia knows something he doesn't. This bakery is not a building. It's a weapon. They find the body hanging behind the market at dawn. Cold. Silent. Swinging slowly from a meat hook like a warning written in flesh. Zofia isn't there when they cut him down. But word spreads fast. The man was middle-aged. Dressed too well for a butcher. No identification. No wallet. Just a name scratched into the leather of his shoe sole. Tiny, but legible. Zofia. No surname, no initials. Just that. It's a signature written in implication. By noon, whispers flood the soup lines and tram queues. The widow's name is on people's lips. Not as gossip, but as a talisman. Did you hear? She had him hanged like a carcass. No, it wasn't her. Someone did it for her. Doesn't matter. The message was received. She walks through the market that day with her head down, buying lentils like any other woman, her face unreadable. But she sees it. The shift. People step out of her way. They nod slightly, some smile nervously. She is no longer someone you ask for favors. She is someone you fear owing a debt. Back at the bakery, Magda is waiting. She hasn't been seen since the failed ledger test. Her coat is new, her face hollow. They're going to pin the body on you, she says without preamble. Zofia sets down the lentils. Let them try. They'll come. I'll be ready. Magda lowers her voice. Did you do it? Zofia meets her eyes. I don't need to. Mainstream fact. Warsaw's post-war black market didn't function through overt violence. It operated through suggestion, control, and a network of loyalty, stronger than fear. Many people still think power was about weapons. But what do you think? Isn't the greatest threat the one never spoken out loud? Magda rubs her face. The name in the shoe, it's too clean, too theatrical. It's a play, Zofia says quietly. And someone's rewriting the script. That night, she takes a walk. Not far, just to the tram stop where Roble once met her under firelight. She half expects him to appear. He doesn't, but someone else does. Zhenya, dressed as a man again. Scarf tight, coat tighter. She doesn't speak, just walks beside Zofia like they've always done this. Your file's been reopened, she says after a block. I'm aware. You're no longer suspected. Oh, you're considered dangerous? Zofia doesn't respond. Zhenya stops, faces her. You need to leave. Zofia raises an eyebrow. You said I had 3 days. You've had 5. Zofia almost laughs. I thought you didn't bluff, Zhenya says. I don't, Zofia replies. I pivot. Zhenya hands her an envelope. Heavy, too heavy for paper. Inside, 2 train tickets, 4 forged identities, and a photo. Marek in Poznan, smiling with fake parents and real bruises healing. I paid for this, Zhenya says softly. Zofia stares at the photo longer than she means to. Then finally, why? Zhenya shrugs. Because I've done worse. And this felt less terrible. Zofia pockets the photo. I can't go. Not yet. Why not? Because someone used my name. Someone wants to make me a symbol. And I need to decide if I'll let them. Zhenya nods once, then walks away. Back at the flat, the air feels thinner. She sits at the table, lights a candle, and opens her ledger. All names are crossed out. All debts are paid. Except one, Julian. He hasn't responded to her last message. She places his photo on the table, draws a line through it with ink, then another, firmer. At sunrise, she walks to the canal and drops the page into the water. She watches it sink slowly, curling at the edges. Someone used her name, but they won't control the story. She will. Because sometimes silence isn't survival. Sometimes silence is war. Julian doesn't send a letter. He sends a man with a broken nose and expensive gloves. The man arrives just after dusk, when the bakery is closed and the city is curling into itself under the weight of snow and suspicion. He knocks once, 2 slow beats, followed by 1 sharp rap. A code, but not hers. Zofia answers with a pistol tucked into her apron pocket. Message? She asks. The man doesn't flinch. He says you're playing a dangerous game. He started it. He says you have a choice. I always do. The man looks down. There's a meeting. Midnight. The old greenhouse near the barracks. Come alone. She closes the door without replying. No promise, no refusal. Just a door shutting like punctuation. Zofia doesn't rush. She spends the next 2 hours preparing. Not a weapon, a plan. She writes 2 notes, each identical. One goes to Helena, the other to Zhenya. If I don't come back, Julian owns the bakery. Burn it. She laces her boots, folds a loaf of bread into waxed paper, tucks a small vial into the heel of her boot. Not cyanide, not poison at all. Ink, because tonight isn't about dying. It's about marking what comes next. The greenhouse is cold. All the glass is broken. Moonlight falls in diagonal stripes, silver and silent. It smells of old roots and ash. Julian waits at the center, still flawless, still too smooth. Pani Zofia, he says, voice echoing in the frost. You came. You summoned? She replies. What do you want? To offer a correction. 2. The story. He pulls a chair from behind him, sets it across from his own. Let me tell you how this ends, he says. Zofia doesn't sit. I already know. Julian smiles. You disappear. Quietly. In exchange, I ensure your name isn't printed on files. Your children, those orphans, are never traced. Your roots are rerouted. Your silence becomes legend. Zofia tilts her head. And in return, the bakery, the contacts, your notes, your ghosts. He gestures gently. You're tired. Let someone else carry the ledger. She steps forward, placing the wax-wrapped bread between them. Break it, she says. He hesitates, then tears it open. Inside, a page from her ledger, uncoded, legible, fresh. Julian frowns. This isn't our deal. No, Zofia says, voice like cold iron. This is leverage. His smile fades. I know your roots, Julian. I know your smugglers. I know the name of the man you paid to plant that body. Julian exhales slowly. I don't want your business, she says. But I'll burn mine before I let you use it. He studies her. You won't survive that. I wasn't planning to. Silence. Then, so what happens now? She hands him a matchbook. The name printed on it. Pod Orwam Hotel. The Eagle Hotel. A Soviet checkpoint hub. Julian's secret exit route. Your name's in their ledger now, she says. Fake, but believable. If anything happens to me, if anything happens to any of the children, that matchbook is delivered with your face. You wouldn't. I already did. Mainstream fact. During this time, Polish black market operatives often relied on pre-negotiated blackmail as insurance. It was dangerous, crude, but effective. Many people still think survival meant fleeing. But what do you think? Is true power staying exactly where you are and daring others to try you? Julian looks down at the bread. I never wanted blood, he says quietly. Zofia doesn't blink. Then why do you smell like it? He stands, adjusts his gloves. Fine, keep your bakery. And the children. He nods. And the children. He walks past her without another word. She waits until his footsteps fade, then pulls the vial from her boot. Marks a thin line of ink on the wall. One only she will understand. A signal for Zhenya. She leaves the greenhouse. That night she scrubs the bakery walls, wipes the counter, makes 3 loaves, one for Merrick's new family, one for the tinsmith, one for herself, each with a note inside. Still here? Because not all victories are loud. Some arrive like bread cooling on a windowsill. The snow finally stops. Not because the season has ended, but because even the sky seems tired of weeping. It leaves behind a crust, thin, brittle, gray at the edges like burnt sugar. Zofia wakes to it on her windowsill, sparkling faintly in the morning light. The world, for once, looks clean. It's a lie, of course, but a beautiful one. The bakery smells of rye and cloves. There's no more fear in the walls, just memory. A quieter kind of ghost. Today is Thursday, delivery day. 3 loaves to the orphanage, 2 to the tannery, 1 to a man with a wooden leg who writes coded letters for the resistance using a typewriter hidden beneath his kitchen table. Zofia prepares them all with calm precision, but when she reaches for the 7th loaf, the one meant for her, the bell over the bakery door chimes, not the sharp ting of a customer, a softer chime. Hesitant, she turns, and there, standing in the doorway with snow on her boots and a scab healing across her cheek, is Basia. Older, taller, same fire. Zofia doesn't speak. She just gestures toward the stool by the window, the one where Basia used to count bribes in colored coins. The girl, no, not a girl anymore, walks forward and sits, her coat frayed, her jaw firm. They tried to catch me in Lviv, she says. Didn't. Zofia raises an eyebrow. Of course not. I came back because I heard they were calling you the mother of smoke. She grins. Sounds dramatic. Sounds ridiculous. Basia sobers. But it's true. Zofia places a mug in front of her. Tea, still hot. I didn't think I'd see you again, she says softly. I didn't think you'd still be standing. Zofia chuckles once. Neither did I. They sip in silence for a while. Then Basia leans in. They're moving again, east, quietly, taking names, closing ledgers. Not Soviet this time, ours, Polish, the ones in new uniforms. Zofia nods. I heard. They want to finish what the Russians started. Zofia sets her mug down. You came back to warn me? No, Basia says. I came back to help. She pulls out a map, hand-drawn, crude, folded too many times. She spreads it across the table. These are the new routes. If we reopen the line through the forest near Radzimin, we can move 10 people a week. No questions asked. Zofia studies the map, then looks up. You still want to run? Basia's eyes flicker. No. Good, Zofia says. Because it's time we build something they can't erase. Mainstream fact. By late 1946, many wartime resistance members turned from smuggling into rebuilding, not just homes, but new structures of protection. Underground schools, illegal printing presses, shadow aid networks for families of prisoners. Many people still think the war's end marked the death of resistance. But what do you think? Can resistance become a kind of architecture? The map becomes a blueprint. They sketch routes between loaves, hide names in flower orders, count footsteps between safe houses with sugar cubes and string. Basia sleeps in the storeroom now. Not because she must, but because the sound of the oven comforts her. One morning, a man appears outside. Not Soviet, not UB, just a man, wearing boots too clean, eyes too sharp. He doesn't come in, just stands across the street, watches. Zofia watches back. He leaves after an hour. Next day, another comes. Then 2. They never speak, never knock. Basia asks, You scared? No, Zofia says. I'm noted. There's a difference. One day, a brick crashes through the bakery window. Wrapped in it, a slip of paper. You're not untouchable. Zofia sweeps the glass, keeps the note, pins it to the wall beside a list of deliveries. That night, she walks to the church near the Vistula, where the confessional booths haven't worked in years. Inside, she kneels. Not to pray, to plant, a letter, to be found if she vanishes. Inside, if they burn the bakery, rebuild it. If they take the children, find more. If my name becomes something to fear, remind them I fed people first. She signs it with a drawing, a small loaf, 3 steam lines. That's all. Back home, Basia asks, What happens if they come for us again? Zofia smiles, tired but unbroken. Then we count our bullets. And our coins? No, she says, turning off the oven. We spend those. The Vistula freezes. Not fully. Just a thin crust across the surface, enough to trick the eye into thinking it's solid. A metaphor, if Zofia believed in those. A city pretending not to break. She walks its banks at dawn, coat buttoned to the throat, boots crunching on frost. This early, the soldiers are still asleep. The black market boys are still dreaming, and the churches are still closed. Only the river moves, slowly, beneath the ice, whispering things Zofia doesn't care to hear. She's thinking about the man who watched her yesterday, and the day before. They're rotating now, 5 in total, never together, never obvious, but always there. A wolf pack that's learned to wear gray. She returns to the bakery by first light. Basha's already up, boiling chicory and reading old code books like bedtime stories. They're getting bolder, the girl says. I know. Basia folds the page. You thinking of running? Zofia shakes her head. I'm thinking of making them blink first. That morning, the front door stays open longer than usual. A silent message. We're not afraid. By noon, the man from across the street steps inside. He doesn't buy anything, doesn't speak. He just walks to the counter, places a folded piece of brown paper, and leaves. Basia closes the door behind him, locks it. Zofia opens the note. One word. Enough. She reads it 3 times, each with a different meaning. Enough, as in, this ends here. Enough, as in, we're watching. Enough, as in, we've let you live too long. She burns it in the stove, then writes a letter. It goes to Helena. Inside one line. If you hear gunfire, destroy the second ledger. Mainstream fact. Post-war paramilitary groups, some state-backed, some freelance, were often used to clean up unofficial resistance figures without formal arrests. Many people still think persecution came through courts. But what do you think? How many threats were delivered with a glance and carried out with silence? That night, Zofia empties the bakery. The fake ledgers go into a false bottom crate labeled salted herring. The hidden pistol is moved to the chimney flue. The cash stash is split between 2 bags of barley, one marked for soup, one for pigeons. She removes the wire above the doorway, resets the trap, then she bakes 12 loaves, all real. For the first time in weeks, she doesn't hollow a single one, because tonight she's not hiding anything. She's offering it all. The next morning, the watchers are gone, all of them. Zofia doesn't trust that, but she appreciates the silence until just after noon, as the bakery fills with warmth and the smell of cinnamon. A man she's never seen before steps inside. Civilian coat, leather gloves, too clean, too confident. Pani Zofia, he says, you're invited. 2? Closure. She dusts her hands. I already closed once this morning. Cinnamon rolls. The man smiles, all teeth. My employer prefers sugar with his truths. She sighs. Basia? She calls back. Mind the oven. She removes her apron, wipes her hands, and follows him outside. They walk. Not far. Just around the corner to an old butcher shop, now closed. Inside, 1 chair, 1 man, Julian, not behind a desk this time, not flanked by guards, just sitting, pale. You wanted my bakery, Zofia says. Julian shakes his head. No, I wanted what it meant. And what's that? He looks up, eyes tired. That you made something out of nothing. I wanted to believe I could do that too. She waits, but I couldn't. I burn everything I touch. You feed it. He leans back. I'm leaving, south, for good. I've made arrangements. Good for you. Julian lifts a hand, slides a packet across the table. Inside, documents, receipts, names. She recognizes a few. UB informants. Soviet go-betweens. Bribes documented in neat handwriting. Insurance, Julian says. in case you want to erase a few names after I go." She doesn't touch it. "I don't erase people," she says. "I just make them less hungry." Julian chuckles. It sounds like an apology. Then he says very quietly, "They still want you dead, you know?" She nods. "I've wanted worse things." "Are you afraid?" Zofia thinks, then answers honestly, "No, just tired." She leaves him there, doesn't look back. At the bakery, Bazia has pulled the rolls from the oven. The smell wraps around the room like a lullaby. "Was that closure?" Bazia asks. Zofia smiles. "No, that was dessert. The fire starts at 3:12 a.m. Not loud, not dramatic. No explosion. Just the smell of smoke. Too early to be chimney soot. The hiss of wood surrendering. A soft cracking noise, like fingers popping after prayer. Zofia wakes instantly. She doesn't scream, doesn't run. She moves. Bazia is already up, shoving clothes and documents into a satchel. She's barefoot, eyes wide but clear. "The alley exit's blocked," she says. "I saw 2 men. Zofia nods once. "Front door. They'll be watching it." "Let them." She steps into her boots, grabs the tin with the last stash of notes and a single photograph, Stefan, folded twice now, and tucks it under her arm. "Through the flower room," she says. Then out the side window. "But—" No arguing. Bazia stares at her. "You're staying?" "I'm distracting. It's not a question, and not up for discussion." Bazia hesitates. Just long enough. Then, with a curse, she ducks through the flower room and disappears into smoke. Zofia turns, grabs the poker from beside the oven. Not to fight, just to hold. Something solid. The fire is in the ceiling now. Someone must have started it from the attic. A smart move, if cruel. The heat drops like a curtain. She doesn't run. Instead, she walks to the front of the bakery, opens the door. 2 men outside flinch, startled by the sudden wave of heat. One of them points a gun. Zofia doesn't flinch. "I suggest," she says, "you lower that." The man hesitates. Smoke curls around her like a shawl. "I'm unarmed," she adds. "But if I burn, the ledgers go with me." The man's jaw tightens. Zofia steps forward. The other one, a boy, maybe 20, lowers his weapon first. She's bluffing, but she's not. He sees it, and that's what makes him turn. "Go," he mutters. She doesn't wait to be told twice. She walks past them, into the street, into the open cold, as the bakery behind her groans and sags inward. Inside, the oven cracks. The beams fall. The walls breathe smoke. She doesn't look back. Not until she's 4 blocks away, standing in the shelter of a closed florist's stall, where Bazia waits with soot on her cheek and a pistol she clearly doesn't know how to use. "Your hair's singed," the girl says. "Your aim's still bad," Zofia replies. They don't speak for a moment. The fire paints the sky orange over the rooftops. Then Bazia says, "It's gone." Zofia nods. "All of it." "No," she says quietly. "Just the building." Mainstream fact. Dozens of black market safe houses across post-war Warsaw were burned. Some by the state, others by rivals, some by accident. Many were never rebuilt, but many continued, through cellars, attics, whispers, and smoke. Many people still think burning the walls ends the resistance. But what do you think? Can fire undo memory? The next day, Zofia walks past the ruins. No one stops her. No one recognizes her without the apron, without the familiar steam of rising dough. A child tugs at his mother's sleeve, pointing at the ashes. "Was that the bread place?" His mother nods. "I heard it fed people during the war." Zofia doesn't smile, just keeps walking. She meets Helena in a bookstore cellar. "The ledger?" Helena asks. "Gone. All of it?" "No," Zofia says and pulls a folded paper from her coat pocket. It's a recipe. Rye, cumin, a dash of vinegar, and a list of names. Not all, just the ones worth saving. Helena takes it. "You sure?" Zofia looks at the cellar walls. "Paper burns," she says, "but bread remembers." That night, they find a new oven. Not much, just a rusty stove and an old laundromat, but it's enough. The next morning, 3 loaves sit on the windowsill, warm, soft, a small note tucked into one. Still here. The city doesn't notice, but the right people do. And that's how Zofia begins again. They don't call her the widow anymore. Not out loud anyway. Now, in whispered corners and under breath during coin exchanges, she's something else. The Ash Keeper. It's half myth, half memory. A name for someone who shouldn't still be alive, let alone still baking. But Zofia walks the streets of Warsaw like someone who owns nothing and fears even less. A woman with soot in her veins and maps in her hands. She doesn't rebuild the bakery, not as it was. Instead, she rents the back room of a burned-out tailor's shop on Zlata Street. The front still smells of scorched wool. But the oven out back, miraculously, still works. It's uneven, crooked, leans slightly to the left like it's always mid-sigh. But it holds heat, and that's enough. The first week she bakes quietly. No customers, no deliveries, just kneading and waiting, letting the smell bleed into the street again, like a dare. By week 2, people return. One man comes in for a loaf, leaves with a child's passport in the crust. An old woman asks for half a roll, leaves with coordinates on wax paper folded into fourths. A boy offers her marbles in exchange for bread. She takes them, tucks them into a jar beside the cash drawer, which now holds exactly 0 zloty but enough secrets to restart a war. Beja paints a sign above the door. Simple. Warmth. It says nothing, but it means everything, and it's easier to remember than the names they've both lost. At night, they sit near the stove and read old letters. Zofia uses them for kindling, not because they mean nothing, but because they meant enough to warm them one last time. One evening, Zhenya returns. She doesn't knock, just steps through the doorway with that familiar blend of silence and smoke. "You should be dead," she says. "Everyone keeps saying that." Zhenya nods. "I came to check." Zofia gestures toward a chair. "You're late. There's only crust left." "I didn't come for bread." "You always say that." They sit in silence. Then Zhenya asks, "What now?" Zofia shrugs. "We bake. We listen. We wait." "For what?" Zofia looks out the cracked window. For the next idiot who thinks he can own a city without feeding it. Mainstream fact. Warsaw's post-war underground adapted faster than any formal institution. Bakeries became mail hubs, shoemakers encrypted roots and souls, laundromats doubled as radio relays. Many people still think survival was passive. But what do you think? Isn't rebuilding the most radical form of resistance? One day, a girl arrives, not older than 13, thin coat, silent stare, a ring of dirt at her collar, and hope curled under her fingernails. Zofia doesn't ask her name, just pulls a stool near the counter and places dough in her hands. The girl kneads clumsily. Beja watches from the corner, arms crossed, hiding a grin. Zofia says, "You'll learn." "I'm not good at this," the girl mutters. "You weren't supposed to be." "But it's hard." Zofia meets her eyes. "Good." That night, as the city sleeps under its usual blanket of gray fog and cheap promises, Zofia steps outside and listens. No soldiers, no watchers, no fire. Just bread cooling on a sill and the soft thump of a child's heartbeat beside hers. She exhales. The world isn't fixed, but it's fed, and for now, that's enough. The ledger never returns. Not the real one. Not the coded journal with its looping ink and breadcrumb trails. Zofia lets it stay gone, because sometimes the absence of a record is the only proof a thing ever mattered. Instead, she writes in margins now. Bits of memory jotted on flour orders and sugar bills. A name beside a weight. A date hidden in a yeast ratio. These are her new ledgers. Unsuspicious, unnoticed, and always slightly sticky. Her network spreads again. Not by force, not with guns, but through bread. And who eats it? A loaf in Praga district buys a falsified birth certificate. A roll sent to Gdansk carries the address of a lost aunt. Even the Russians, occasionally, accept her goods, though they never smile and never speak her name. That's fine. Respect doesn't need to be spoken, especially when it's earned through carbohydrates and carefully applied leverage. One morning, a man from the ministry stops by. Official, too well dressed for this block. He holds a clipboard like a shield. He says, "We've had reports." Zofia, dusted in flour and holding a ball of dough, gestures for him to continue. "You're operating without a license," she nods. "You've registered no deliveries, no staff." Another nod. "Some suggest you're trafficking messages, contraband, possibly fugitives." Zofia doesn't blink, then says, "Would you like a cinnamon bun?" The man pauses, then somehow, against his better judgment, nods. She hands it to him, fresh, still warm, glazed. He eats in silence, chews, swallows, clears his throat, then leaves. No forms signed, no citations issued, just crumbs on his sleeve and something unreadable in his eyes. Bajia watches through the flour-dusted window. "That was close," she says. "No," Zofia replies. "That was breakfast." Mainstream fact. During Poland's recovery, enforcement was inconsistent. Many bureaucrats quietly supported local heroes while pretending not to. Some were bribed, others were simply tired. Many people still think legality equals morality. But what do you think? Can the law be hungry too? Spring returns without fanfare. The ground softens. Children grow. So does the list of people Zofia doesn't need to hide anymore. And yet, she keeps the habit, because safety, like dough, takes time to rise, and even longer to trust. One morning, Marek appears, just there, in the doorway, taller than she remembers. He carries a school bag, wears a hat too big for his head. He doesn't speak. Neither does she. Not right away. Then he asks, "Is the oven still warm?" She nods. He walks in, bakes a roll, just one, sits at the old bench by the stove. They don't say goodbye, because they never really said hello. But that one roll, it says everything. That evening, the ashes in the fireplace catch a draft. They scatter briefly, rising like tiny ghosts. Zofia watches them fade. She doesn't reach to stop them. Some things are meant to disappear. Others stay. Quietly, like steam on a window. Like the smell of warm bread at the end of a hard night. Like a woman who never asked to be remembered, only not forgotten. Word count, 20106. Wind down, 300 words. And now, as the last crumbs cool on the sill and the shadows draw longer across a city that's been burned, rebuilt, and burned again, we let the story settle. Zofia is no longer standing in alleys, watching the watchers. No longer measuring the distance between safety and compromise with a pistol under her apron. Instead, she's somewhere softer. Not safer, necessarily, but quieter. The world didn't offer her peace, so she made her own, kneaded it from grief, folded it through courage, let it rise in the warmth of something you could call hope. If you squinted, her legacy isn't written in history books. It's etched in the crusts of 100 loaves that made someone feel, if only for a night, a little less lost. It's in the way Basia leans against the doorframe now, older, calmer, but still watching. And it's in every girl who ever learned to smuggle freedom inside flour. So wherever you are tonight, whatever weight you carried into bed, know this: not all survivors are loud. Some wear aprons instead of armor. Some build armies with recipes, and some just keep the oven warm for when you finally come home. Now close your eyes. Let the streets of old Warsaw fade. Let the smoke clear, and let yourself drift, softly, gently, into something like rest.